Hello and welcome back to Politically Incorrect. I'm Carmen Christiano. Well, tonight we have a Democratic State Senate debate for the 3rd Middlesex District. And with me on the show tonight we have Mike Barrett, Mara Dolan, Joe Mullin, Alex Buck, and Joe Kearns Goodwin. And we have a lot to cover tonight, so I won't take too much time introducing each of the candidates. They will be introducing themselves with a statement of up to 2 minutes. And I'd like to start with Mike Barrett. Mike?
Thank you, Carmen, and thanks for convening us. This is the last gathering of all 5 candidates. I'm pleased to be here and pleased to be in Chelmsford. My name is Mike Barrett. I served in the state Senate years ago for 8 years, representing Cambridge, Belmont, Watertown, and Allston-Brighton, but I grew up not too far from here in Reading, and for a time represented Reading and North Reading and Wilmington in the State House of Representatives. More recently, for the past 18 years, I've been in healthcare IT, healthcare and computers. I know a lot about healthcare, a lot about the costs of healthcare, and a lot about the internet, the new economy, really, that's driving the creation of jobs in Massachusetts. I want to go back into this legislature, taking this private sector experience with me on behalf of the folks I represent. But I want to speak to an issue that I've encountered as I've worked door to door in Chelmsford. As you know, a lot of my family members have been going door to door in town, a lot of my volunteers. And in addition to the entire array of issues that we're all concerned about, Chelmsford folks are very concerned about this element of representation, because the town doesn't have the clout that it might have in the House of Representatives. And I want to speak directly to that question. I intend to be a state senator who understands truly what it is to be middle class and working and struggling and raising kids. I'm the second oldest of 10 kids, started working at age 13 to support my family, did go to Harvard, but worked through there paying my expenses by cleaning the dorm rooms of the other kids who could afford to go on vacations. I know what it's like not to have money or not to have quite enough to meet all your bills. I want to represent Chelmsford. This is the place that I identify with in terms of my own boyhood in Reading, Massachusetts, and I will represent you with passion. I'll represent you with conviction. I'll represent you with a lot of expertise because of this legislative and private sector experience that I've got, and I'm going to focus on jobs and the cost of health care and environmental protection. So I earnestly seek your vote on September 6th.
Thank you very much, Mike. Perfect timing. Alex Buck, your opening statement, please.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Alex Buck, and I'm running to be our next state senator because I believe we need elected leaders who understand our communities and are committed to always putting our families first. You know, I don't come from a traditional political background, but maybe that's a good thing, because maybe it's time to elect someone who's not a typical politician, someone who will stand up every day to powerful interests and insiders and fight for our communities, to strengthen our schools, improve our roads, and work for smart economic growth that helps our local families. You know, I talk to folks across the district every day. I talk with seniors who earn fixed incomes, struggling to keep their heads above water, wondering if a local override to keep class sizes down or a library open is going to cost them their homes. No one should have to make that choice. I talk with firefighters, teachers, police officers, wondering if the retirement they and their families were promised will be there when they retire, as town after town struggles with how they're going to fund it. You know, I talk with folks trained for jobs that are disappearing, wondering if they're going to find themselves suddenly unemployed, while at the same time we're giving tax breaks to companies that are shipping jobs overseas, and funding for workforce training is being threatened by budget cuts. You know, we must pull together as a community to address these issues if we're going to provide a decent future for our children. And we need elected leaders who won't betray our trust, but rather inspire us to do more for our communities. Leaders who share our values, listen to our needs, and will deliver for our families. Leaders who will invest smartly in economies of the future like biotech and clean energy. Leaders with the courage to fund local aid in our schools. Leaders who will stand up and say, we ought to be able to do better. You know, as I've said, I haven't followed the normal path to elected office, and I hadn't planned a political career for myself, but I care about my community. That's why I'm running for state senate, and that's why I'm asking for your help on this campaign. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Alex. Another perfect timing. When Mara, maybe we can make it 3 for 3. Here's the introductory statement from Mara Dolan.
Thank you. And thank you, Carmen, for having us all on. As many of you know, I have my own show on local cable, and so I'm a big supporter of local cable, and I know how many people watch. It's vitally important that the people of Chelmsford have an opportunity to hear from the candidates. I'm Mara Dolan, and and I'm running to be your state senator because it isn't enough to send someone to the legislature with the right values. We've got to send someone with the know-how, not just to propose the right legislation, but to make sure it gets passed. I've been supporting myself since I was 18 years old, getting through college, law school, and starting a law practice as a single mother. I'm a public defender up in Lawrence and a social worker, and I know how to bring parties together. It's one of the reasons I'm the only candidate running with the endorsement of 2 state senators who are serving today. Both Senator Jamie Eldridge and Senator Dan Wolf have endorsed me because they know I'm the best person to work with in the Massachusetts State Senate to pass the right legislation. Chelmsford is a wonderful town. I have loved all of the time that I have spent here. But I know you spend 50% of your budget on public schools. We've got to send someone to the legislature who will revise the formula used to determine local aid. Billerica gets between $6 and $9 million a year more than Chelmsford because the formula doesn't work anymore. It was developed in 1993. Despite the financial challenges, you're fiscally sound, and you have wonderful public schools and much to be proud of. I'm the candidate who talks the most about the importance of jobs. I have the support of one of Chelmsford's largest employers, Kronos. The CEO, Aaron Ain, and I have talked extensively about how to bring jobs into Chelmsford, how to meet the needs of the town of Chelmsford, how to help it grow. As your state senator, I'll be in Chelmsford talking, listening, having town meetings, town halls, hearing your concerns, and making sure you get the representation you deserve. Thank you so much for watching us today. I ask for your support and your vote on Thursday, September 6th. I'm Mara Dolan. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mara Dolan. I guess you've all practiced the 2 minutes perfectly because...
Oh, no, you're not ready for us.
It's the timekeeper.
Oh, I see.
Timekeeper.
Well, thank you all very much. And Joe Kearns Goodwin,
Absolutely.
your introductory statement, please.
Yeah, definitely. So I am Joe Kearns Goodwin. I'm also running for state senate here in the 3rd Middlesex District. You know, I grew up in this district. I was born here, I was raised here. My wife and I, who's in the audience right now, live here now. My brother teaches the public schools here. My parents are still here. And I really love this community. And I'm running because I truly believe that government has a role to play in making real improvements in our lives. And I also think that I have a set of experiences which are different from everybody else, which will enable me to be the state senator that you deserve. I'll give you a really brief history. I went to public schools here, went off to Harvard College, graduated, and ended up joining the Army in the aftermath of 9/11. And I served tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. And it was an incredibly formative experience for me. But you know, I kind of had a canned opening. Something I wanted to say something else I think is more important. You know, it's so easy when you're doing a campaign like this to get caught up in the how. What are the tactics? What's the strategy? What are the numbers? How many doors do you knock? How many phone calls you make? That sometimes you lose sight of the why. And I was really dramatically reminded of the why last Saturday here in Chelmsford at the Legion Hall when I was reunited with a guy who I was able to serve with in Iraq, a squad leader. He came back from Iraq when we both did in 2006, and you know, he struggled with addiction, with depression, with homelessness, all the things that afflict society, afflict veterans twice as hard. But there he was, wearing a suit, introducing me to the crowd, and his father was out there in front of him. And you know, the text message he wrote me on the way back was, you know, after my dad and I stopped crying, we realized this was the best day ever. Because for the first time, my father realized what his son did in order to come back somewhat damaged. And you know, that's government's role. It's to help the people that are on their way to be damaged and to help them get the step up they need. And it was win or lose in this campaign. There's a lot of good candidates in this campaign. Win or lose, I will always be proud of that moment. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Joe. That's 4 for 4 so far. So, Joe Mullin, would you have your introductory
I
statement,
accept the
please?
challenge.
I know, I would have kept going, you know.
Don't start yet. I'm Joe Mullin, and very honored to be here in Chelmsford once again. I first came to Chelmsford for the 300th anniversary of the town in 1957, and I've been coming back ever since. I was inspired to run for political office in middle school when John Kennedy won the presidency. And at his inauguration, he said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." I was inspired, my generation was, and I'm here running for office on that basis. In addition, I am a former selectman from the town of Weston. I am a member of the Democratic State Committee, and I am also a businessman who is a job creator. My partners and I took over an abandoned mill in 1998 with 30 employees and 3 tenants, and today we have 100 tenants and 2,500 new jobs. I am the jobs candidate, but I actually want to take the bulk of my time to salute my colleagues. We have been campaigning with one another since the month of February, and I have to say that the voters of this district are extraordinarily served by the individuals who have come forward. They say that democracy is in some type of problem area, and each of the individuals whom you've heard from today has a biography and a story which is both dramatic, different, and compelling. And I really think that one of the issues that I want to emphasize that has come to the fore that is really a long-run goal of all of us in our Commonwealth is the endorsement that all of us have for a single-payer health insurance program for our Commonwealth. As I've gone around the Commonwealth, I've discovered that health care is the one universal issue that affects virtually every citizen of our community here. And as a small businessman, I can attest that I have had problems before in finding health insurance for my employees. To me, health insurance is a right and not a privilege, and if I'm elected state senator, I promise you that I will do my best to implement a single-payer program, no matter how long it takes, for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Joe. What a great group of candidates. I mean, all on time. Now, if you only, whoever wins could serve as wonderfully as you have shown yourself to be prepared today, I think we'd all be well served here in Massachusetts, in this district. Thanks. I'm going to alternate who's going to start first with the questions. So since there's 3 on this side, could I start with you, Mara Dolan, on this first question?
Sure.
And the first question comes from Grant Welker, who's a Lowell Sun reporter. He says, by many measures, Massachusetts has fared better than other states in recovering from the recession. However, how would you help the Massachusetts economy become even stronger in the short and long term?
Thank you. That's a wonderful question. I think jobs are the most critical issue that we're facing today. There are 120,000 jobs in Massachusetts right now that are going unfilled because companies can't find workers with the special skills they need. We need to support our community colleges and our technical schools so that they can provide that training. We can fill those jobs, help Massachusetts companies grow, and bring other good companies into Massachusetts. If everyone in Massachusetts had a job who wanted one, we'd have the revenue we need. Jobs raise revenue without raising taxes. We could spend the money rebuilding the public transportation, expanding the public transportation system, rebuilding our roads and bridges, investing in sustainable energy and alternative forms of energy. Massachusetts has come out ahead because we've supported certain kinds of businesses, biotech, finance, green energy. Those were important initiatives that have tapped into what's called our education economy. But Massachusetts ranks 47th in the country in support for public colleges and universities. I'm the only one in this race who didn't go to Harvard, and I joke about it and say that Lawrence District Court was my world's greatest university. But I'm smart, and I know there are a lot of smart people in Massachusetts who don't get to go to Harvard. They go to our public colleges and universities, and they deserve all the support we can give them so that they can fulfill the Massachusetts dream. As your state senator, no one will do more to make sure that our kids and our adults get the education and the training they need so that they can have jobs. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt said, "The best social program is a job." As a former social worker, I couldn't agree with him more. I see as a public defender every day the cost of unemployment. I know how many good people are out there who want jobs, and I know that everyone, regardless of background, education, experience, or training, has something to offer, has something to give. And if we let them give what they have, they'll repay us 1,000-fold. Thank you.
Thank you, Mara. Joe Kearns Goodwin, the same question,
Yeah,
please?
no, I will say this. Mara, I agree with her completely. The skills gap in this state is pretty tremendous. And you're right, with 200,000 people unemployed and 100,000 jobs out there, more or less, different figures, that are unfilled, not because people aren't hiring, not because they can't afford the health care, but because they can't find people with the right skills, is absolutely what we should be focusing on. But it's not just talking about how do you reform your higher education programs. It's how do you marry up industry with higher education to make sure that we are graduating people with the skills they need to take the jobs today. And also make sure, we all know that government bureaucracies get very static. They get very old school. So we want to make sure they have the agility to adjust, because we know 10 years from now, those skills will be different. But it's not just about public higher education. It's not just about certificate programs. It's also about making sure that we fully and fairly fund Chapter 70, which is a local aid to the cities and towns from the state. I mean, it's a formula that I know you worked on, Mike, in 1993. It's supposed to be looked at on a yearly basis. It's been a long time since it has. So I think reconstituting the commission that actually looks at the formula to make sure it's working fairly makes a lot of sense. But you talked about the future, not what you do right now. What do you do for the future? And I think it's absolutely essential that we, as a society, invest in pre-K because nothing in this world can ever be proven categorically. But if there's anything that's really close to that, it's that every dollar that we invest in pre-K pays itself back 10, 20, 100 times over the life of that student, that individual. So while I absolutely believe it's the right thing to do ideologically, because we know the skills gap starts before you even start kindergarten, it's also the pragmatic thing to do. So I am in favor of pre-K, K through 12, higher education. Education needs to be our focus from soup to nuts.
Right, thank you very much, Joe. Joe Mullin, same question.
I want to agree with everything that Joe said and also what Myra said. And I think the key to jobs, getting out of the recession, is really partnerships. The word is partnerships. First, a partnership that has our schools, our guidance counselors, reflecting on the jobs of the future, the industries of the future. And many of them are traditional industries, such as some manufacturing or tourism, which is bound to grow. Many of them are information technology fields that we need to begin to orientate the young high school young men and women to go into those fields. In addition, the community colleges and the colleges should follow suit. Secondly, retraining, where workers are being dislocated for a variety of reasons, that there should be an extremely aggressive and involved effort to retrain these individuals along these same lines. The jobs that Myra says are going unfilled can be filled if we have a retraining program. And then the other element that's involved here is the role of the Commonwealth in actually helping out employers. I was the beneficiary in taking over an abandoned facility and received quite a bit of partnership assistance from a state agency called the Massachusetts Office of Business Development. The partnership of employers and communities with the Massachusetts Office of Business Development gets through the permitting process, attracts individuals and companies to invest in buildings that are are abandoned and not being used. And I'd like to see that expanded so that the definitions are liberalized, so that communities where these vacancies occur can have a very vibrant ability to go ahead and attract new uses to these facilities.
Thank you very much, Joe. Alex Buck, same question.
Thank you. You know, we need jobs, we need jobs, we need jobs. You know, I've been part of one of the most innovative sectors in our economy, and I've owned a successful small business. And you know what makes businesses thrive? It's people. And when we invest in our communities, safe neighborhoods, roads and bridges, excellent schools, we hold on to the talent businesses need to succeed. You know, as a small business owner and as someone who's worked in life sciences and high tech, I can tell you it's critical that we have strong education and we have public transportation to support those things. That's why I've been such an advocate for those things, you know, during this campaign. Education is a fundamental component to ensuring that we've got a workforce that is both well trained for the job and, you know, provide a decent community and high quality of life. Public transportation is critical, and we're moving the wrong direction on that. We've been pulling back on services and pulling back on funding and increasing the fare, and that's exactly the wrong way. If we want to stimulate our economy, people need to be able to get to jobs. It's just common sense. So we certainly need to ensure that the infrastructure, education, public transportation is there so we can have a vibrant and vital and economy. Certainly, Massachusetts has been served well by the life sciences industry, and it can in the future, like with clean energy, with biotech. But to do that, we have to invest in the things that have worked for us, not give individual tax breaks to individual companies. That has never worked historically for Massachusetts, and it won't work for in the future. So as state senator, I'll definitely put extra emphasis on the things that have always worked for Massachusetts, investing in our communities, investing in infrastructure that creates the jobs and creates a healthy economic environment, instead of giving individual tax breaks to individual companies that rarely has worked for Massachusetts. Thanks.
Thank you, Alex. Mike Barrett, your same question, please.
I work and have for the last 18 years, Carmen, as a consultant in healthcare and information technology, which includes a lot of life sciences work. I've focused in particular on the use of computers to conduct clinical trials. We call it electronic data capture. And I have a worry about the future of life sciences in Massachusetts. I think we have to at least have a discussion about its potentially weakening as a job source for us, because I've watched what's happened to the pharmaceutical industry in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. There are fewer blockbuster drugs, defined as drugs that earn at least $1 billion for drug firms. And that decline of the blockbuster drug with wide application is going to likely hit biotech as well. So we can expect more boutique products, but fewer bestsellers, if you will, that can help a lot of patients stabilize their conditions or get better. I'm concerned that we need a contingency plan to support life sciences, but also to look beyond life sciences if again, developments in the pharmaceutical industry are any indication. So I want us to bring us in a new direction. I want us to go into health and wellness, the job of staying healthy as you age and as you see your population age. I focus on use of the internet for people who want to manage chronic conditions. You won't be able to see this on your TV camera, but this is the sort of computer I work with in healthcare these days. It's an inch long, it sits on a belt loop, it's a wireless monitor to enable people to keep track of their exercise, their calories consumed, their distances walked. There is an industry to be conceived of, little spin-offs from UMass Lowell and from BU and from MIT. There's an industry to be nurtured if you know it. And it consists of helping people stay well as they get older, and it's something I know a great deal about, and I want us as a state to have a discussion about what happens post-life sciences when this state needs to diversify more in terms of its job base. That's the industry I've been in. I can help.
Thank you very much, Mike. Well, our next question will start with Alex Buck, please. And this is from the editor of the Chelmsford Independent, Jesse Floyd. Some have criticized Melissa's bill, the state's new habitual offender law, recently signed by Governor Patrick. They've criticized it for not allowing judicial discretion. Do you support minimum mandatory sentencing for repeat offenders?
As a concept, minimum mandatory sentencing just doesn't work. I had a lot of trouble with this particular bill because of that. Certainly there are some decent aspects to it, actually pulling back on some of the existing mandatory minimums. But we need to give the judges the ability to really promote justice. And when it comes to the justice system, I am more concerned with maintaining justice than maintaining the system. Certainly we have to be fair. And there are a number of crimes that would really just shock us to the core. We can't believe other human beings are even capable of doing what they do. And certainly we need a very strong justice system that brings those people to justice. But what we can't do is go against what makes sense, what is logical, and that is that a judge would have the ability to pass a ruling. So I firmly believe that there should be a safety valve included in that law. There was not, and that concerned me.
Thank you, Alex. We go with Mara Dolan, please.
Thank you. As a public defender in Lawrence, I know all too well the shortcomings of the criminal justice system. First and foremost, we have to make sure that victims get the justice that they deserve. But our next priority must be that when someone does commit a crime, the sentence they receive serves to rehabilitate and deter them from committing any more crimes. If minimum mandatory sentencing did that, I would support it. But there is no evidence that it does. I can't tell you how many times I've had cases where both the judge, the prosecutor, the defense attorney, the probation officer, absolutely everyone agrees that a defendant needs drug treatment, but because of the laws, they're forced to be put into incarceration. We're incarcerating nonviolent offenders. This incarceration neither rehabilitates nor deters. 90% of the people who come into the criminal justice system do so because of drug and or alcohol abuse or mental illness. We must stop incarcerating people who need drug treatment. I agreed with the Chief Justice of the Supreme Judicial Court, who objected to Melissa's bill because it did not allow for judicial discretion. There is no question that there are people who are dangerous and violent, and they should be kept behind bars. But there are also people who, because of mental illness and drug and or alcohol abuse, through rehabilitation, can go on to lead productive lives. Judges know more than anyone else about a case and about the defendants before them. So I do support judicial discretion, and I do support making sure, first and foremost, that we take care of victims.
Thank you very much, Myra. Joe Kearns Goodwin?
Yeah, no, I mean, Carmen, obviously right now this is a really important discussion because of the passage and signage of Melissa's bill not too long ago. And I will say this, I will agree with both of you that I think that mandatory minimums in general are a really bad thing. You know, when I went to law school, I read cases of people with 3 strikes and you're out bills in California that for a $20 larceny went to jail for life. And I think there's something fundamentally wrong with that. I really do. However, I do think this bill that was actually passed and signed here in the legislature was far more thoughtful than any bill has been before, because it was linked to the reduction in mandatory minimums of nonviolent offenses. I think, Mara, you're absolutely right. We do too much of putting people away for things that are nonviolent when diversion programs and treatment would make more sense. So, you know, while I don't think I would have co-sponsored this bill, I don't think I would have championed it, I absolutely understand why the governor signed it, because it's not a 3 strikes and you're out bill. It's something that you're on your 3rd sentence for a very small list of violent offenses, you have to serve your full term. So, like I said, it would not have been something that I would have gotten behind full-throatedly, but I understand why the governor signed it. I understand why the legislature passed it, especially because it was linked to the reduction for mandatory minimums for nonviolent offenses.
Thank you, Joe. Joe Mullin, please.
I agree with Joe Goodwin, and I would have voted for the bill, would have voted for Melissa's bill. I think that the idea of the individuals having well-defined, concrete sentences for the 3rd vicious offense that they have served is appropriate. The idea of nonviolent offenders having less sentencing and with more of an ability to appeal was also in the bill. So it was a bit of a paradox in terms of the legislative intent, but I support the concept of both cases and would have voted for the bill.
Great. Thank you, Joe. Mike Barrett, please.
I do support the preservation of judicial discretion. I think the bill may well have set a balance. It's not the bill I would have written either. I would have wanted to have addressed an overarching problem that I'm going to refer to in a moment, but I probably would have voted for this particular bill in terms of the governor's trying to set a balance. The problem I'm really worried about, though, is the number of people, the sheer number of people in jail for nonviolent offenses of all kinds. We should not be the country that leads in putting people behind bars. We shouldn't be the country that has these extraordinary statistics about young men and the number of them who are in gainful employment as opposed to serving in penal institutions. There is something fundamentally that we have to look at in terms of the amount of taxpayer dollars that we salt away preserving this prison system. It's too much. We can't afford it. And I'm looking to a kind of a new liberal and conservative movement that says, hey, wait a second. This money, this is our tax dollars going to put so many people in jail. There's something wrong with the laws when that many people wind up, when they do have addiction problems or problems of mental illness, some sort of crime that doesn't involve a victim being physically brutalized. We've got too many people serving jail sentences. I think we can get conservatives and liberals focused on ways that we can reduce the spending, divert people into community programs, try to figure out what the heck is going on. But at the same time, all of us, I think, here would agree that the real bad actor, the person who's hurting another human being, has to be put behind bars. We have to get the bad guys But the people who are incompetent in terms of the way they're living their lives, we have to figure out how to deal with them other than throwing them in the clink and throwing away the key.
I see. Thank you.
It's costing us too much money.
Yes, thank you. It's how much is it? 40, 50,000 a year? or
Enormous.
something?
You
For-
might as
About
well.
40.
You might as
About
well
40.
send them. You might as
Yeah.
well send them to Harvard.
Yeah, right.
And quite frankly, some of them would do very well there. I think.
Yeah. Some.
No reflection on anyone present.
Right. Well, we have time for rebuttals and follow-ups on this topic or the previous topic, if anybody has anything. Previous topic was about the jobs, and this one, Melissa's bill.
No, the only thing I would say, I think it really is, and I think everybody here can agree about how foundational education is to everything we're doing. I mean, the reason I've been able to accomplish anything that I have been able to accomplish in my life, the reason that I'm running right now is because I came out of the public school system in this district. And I want to make sure that when my wife and I, who's sitting in the audience, have our kids, that they have the same opportunities I did, regardless of your zip code.
Yes, thank you. Any other rebuttals or
You have more questions, don't you?
Oh, I do.
We can fill in.
I mean, if you
all
want
that.
us to keep the conversation going.
It's amazing. I've never hosted a debate where people didn't have a lot to discuss and argue about, you might say. But that's great. I mean, it's all you're on a similar page, not exactly, but almost the same page. But well, maybe if we could start with Joe Mullin on the next topic.
Depending on what it is.
He might toss me.
Well, and this is a question from the editor of the Chelmsford Patch, who is sitting in our audience, a new editor, Andrew Sylvia.
Welcome, Andrew.
Welcome.
And the question is, do you see yourself trying to work with the state Senate leadership, or are you aiming to be a more independent voice in the Senate? And what impact would your choice have on Chelmsford? So are you going to be more independent, or are you going to more work with the leadership in the Senate?
Well, there's a dichotomy in it. There's no letter I in the word team. That's what I learned at the Harvard football program. No letter I in the word team. And so that in essence what you have to do is to get into the state Senate and make sure that the leadership knows who you are and you know what the leadership's goals are. That being said, before I get to what I would do for Chelmsford, I believe that the legislature could follow an awful lot of the progressive progress made by our cities and towns in transparency and being clear-cut to the public as to what's going on. We have an extraordinarily progressive legislature in which some of the leadership, especially in the House, has had problems in the past. Transparency is something that we gain from the municipalities, and I would convey that message to the leadership in the Senate. That being said, I am a individual who believes that you have to have independence of judgment. You represent the voters of the district who are sending you to the state Senate, what their values are, what their views are, and what their goals are. And one of the values I have is that I've been a selectman for 3 terms in the town of Weston and have done an awful lot in the way of economic development and project management. And in terms of Chelmsford and in terms of the other communities, Hanscom Field, the Great Meadows National Wildlife Refuge, Minuteman Park, the secret or the future of Route 3, and the commercial development there and transportation management. These are programs and issues on which I've had a lot of experience on the ground in terms of my own municipality. In addition, for the 9 years of my tenure as a selectman, I was on the board of directors of a regional planning agency called the Metro West Growth Management Committee. It's got to be regional, district-wide, as well as a reflection of the municipality. And I really, to be frank about it all, this would really be where I would want to spend my passion and my most aggressive effort on behalf of the communities in general and Chelmsford in particular.
Thank you, Joe. Can we go to Alex Buck next, please?
Sure. After spending, after settling here in Chelmsford about 10 years ago with my wife and 2 boys, I started getting more and more, active in the community. I was elected town meeting representative. I helped guide critical renovations to some of our schools, which kept it on time and on budget. I was involved in charter reform and changes to the budgeting and forecasting process that kept greater transparency. But I knew our community and communities all across the district needed more support from the state. So I started volunteering for candidates and causes that offered the district something more, something new. Because I believed then, as I certainly do now, it's important to have leaders with fresh perspectives. We need folks that don't come from the same career path, that don't come from the same political mold that we normally have, to get up on Beacon Hill and have a solid understanding of what the community's needs really are. I think then and only then we'll be able to actually represent the communities well enough and not the special interests, and be worried more about the community and not about individual careers, to fund things like local aid, like education funding, like reforming Chapter 70 education funding. Working with the leadership obviously is something that has to happen. It's not about, who butts the most heads. That's not how things are done, certainly. But we do need somebody that can go up there and really represent the values of the communities and fight for the communities, not for any particular special interests.
Thank you, Alex. Michael Barrett, please.
I want to mention, because it's relevant, Carmen, that I've been endorsed in this race by Carol Amick, the former state senator for Chelmsford, and for other areas in the district. I've been endorsed by Congressman Barney Frank. I've been endorsed by the former Secretary of Environmental Affairs under Mike Dukakis, a fellow by the name of James Hoyt. And what they mention, I like to think, and what they're feeling, is that in the 8 years I served in the Senate, I showed a grasp of strategy. And when you fight for Chelmsford, you're really talking about being an insider in some efforts, but an outsider in both. But you're never talking about going it alone. One never gets anything done as an individual agitator. You have to work with your colleagues. But I'll give you an example, and it's directly relevant to Andy's question about where working with a colleague doesn't necessarily mean working always with the leadership. When I entered the House, Proposition 2.5 had passed, and Chelmsford and other towns were being starved for local aid, and there was not a predisposition to helping them that much. The state wanted to hold on to its tax dollars. I organized my colleagues into a kind of rank-and-file rebellion, and I said, our towns need more money. And it was working with my colleagues that enabled me to actually reverse a very stingy approach to local aid, and I was named the Mass Municipal Association's Legislator of the Year for working with colleagues on behalf of towns like Chelmsford to get local aid when the state budget didn't want to yield any. I'll mention another example. County government, Middlesex County government, used to cost Chelmsford an arm and a leg, filled with patronage employees all working for the most part down in Cambridge. I pushed to move the control of county budgets out of the very powerful Committee on Counties in the legislature down to a city and town board, and as soon as we succeeded, the cost of county governments to municipalities went down and down and down, and all those patronage jobs went bye-bye. So one doesn't have to compromise and work with the leadership in order to work with one's colleagues and secure victories for one's constituents.
Thank you very much, Mike. Joe Kearns Goodwin?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, Carmen and Andy. I appreciate it. I think there's no doubt that we all should value independence and the ability to stand up for the things you believe in. Our communities should always come first. The reason that's why I joined the Army in the first place is the reason I'm doing this now, because I love this community. I understand that what happens around here is so important, but I also think there's a real value in consensus building. And I'll give a little example from my history, as Mike gave from his. When I was in Iraq, I had a platoon of 30 men. And in that 30 men was every race, every class, every socioeconomic background. And before we went on a patrol, before we mounted a raid, before we resupplied a hospital or rebuilt a school, no one asked, are you a Democrat, are you a Republican, are you conservative, are you liberal, are you from a red state or a blue state? They said, no, what do we need to do to get something done in a situation where failure really wasn't an option? One of the other great experiences that I had in my life is I took a semester out from college to work for the late, great progressive hero Paul Wellstone, who was a senator from Minnesota. And this is a man who always was able to stand up to leadership, never afraid to speak truth to power, but understood at the end of the day that his job was to deliver results for his constituency and his country, and he was able to do that. And you have the most progressive member of the U.S. Senate working with Denny Hastert, who's a pretty conservative member of the House of Representatives, to actually accomplish things. So as I hope to embark on this, I think that it's absolutely essential that we have people who maintain true to their ideology, that never actually, never compromise their beliefs, but also understand their job is to get something done. And having someone like Paul Wellstone or like Corey Atkins, who's the state rep from Concord and parts of Chelmsford, who's my campaign chair, as models, I think will serve me very well in the days to come.
Right, thank you, Joe. Myra Dolan, please.
Thank you. The reality of working in the Massachusetts State Senate is that the Senate president has a tremendous amount of power. The Senate isn't nearly as progressive as we need it to be, and the Senate president does not come from a progressive district. That means it's more important than ever that we have good progressives who work together in order to get us single-payer health care, to expand public transportation, rebuild roads and bridges, expand sustainable forms of energy, and all of the values that we hold dear. I've not only been endorsed by two sitting state senators, but as the co-chair of the policy committee of the Massachusetts Democratic State Committee, I've worked with a number of senators who are serving right now. Senator Eileen Donahue, who represents Lowell, was my mentor in Emerge Massachusetts. Chelmsford and Lowell have a very important relationship, and it's important to have a state senator who works well with the senator who represents Lowell. As your state senator, I'll bring the experiences I have, both as a public defender and as a social worker, in working with people and bringing them together. Sometimes people are on completely opposite sides of an issue. The way that you form consensus is by listening to them, hearing what they have to say, finding common ground. As your state senator, I'll be in the community listening to what you have to say. No one is going to go to the Massachusetts State Senate and get us absolutely everything we want. But here is my promise to you. I will listen to you. I will know what you want. I will let you know what we can do and what we can't. And when it's all over, we'll start over the next day to move forward in the right direction. That's what we need in the Massachusetts State Senate, and so I'm very proud to be able to offer that to you.
Thank you, Myra. Any follow-up rebuttal question, comments for the other candidates? No, we're all set to move on? Right? Well, our next question, if I could begin with
Sure,
Joe
of course you
Kearns
can.
Goodwin.
Yes.
And Joe, do you favor a graduated state income tax wherein those earning more income would pay a higher income tax rate? And do you think the state's 5.3% income tax rate should be reduced to 5% as the voters stated on election day a few years ago?
I think it's a great question. I mean, honestly, the issue of revenue is really central to almost everything we're talking about, because so many of the programs that we care about, be they universal pre-K, be they fully and fairly funding Chapter 70, talking about higher education and finding ways to do that, cost money. I do think that our movement has to be towards a graduated income tax. I think everything else we do is around the margins, and that's sort of foundational. But you know what? You know, this is not someone you should quote in a Democratic primary, but Jamie Dimon, who's the head of JP Morgan Chase, was on Meet the Press about 4 weeks ago now. And he said, I would be happy for the Bush era tax cuts to expire if I believed that government had a plan with what to do with the money. And you know, the reason that graduate income tax has been on the ballot 5 times and failed 5 times, and an active investor in communities, which I think we all support, will probably fail this time, because people don't believe that government knows what to do with the resources. I think that's exactly why we need to get new, fresh faces up there to restore that faith in government, which has been eroding certainly since Watergate, definitely since Reagan said the government was the problem. And you know what? Also, if you're an investment, you invest in companies, you're going to ask for a return on investment. What's your business plan? Well, government should be held to the same standards. We need to make our case to the people and show them what the return on investment is, because it is huge. If they invest money with us through a graduate income tax or through other means, we have to show them that every dollar you invest in pre-K gets paid back. It's not just the right thing to do, which it is, but it's the absolutely pragmatic thing to do as well. So, you know, one of the things that, am I done?
No.
One of the things that people say to me sometimes, why are you talking about this? You know, that's too lofty. You're a state senator. You don't know what that means. Well, I know exactly what that means. And I can't wait to roll up my sleeves and get my hands dirty talking about Route 128 congestion, Hanscom expansion, Hanscom extinction. But you know what? I think it's all our jobs, everybody watching here tonight, everybody in this room, to do what they can, from a select person to a state rep to a state senator to a governor, to restore the faith in government that's been going away for a long time.
Great. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Joe Mullin, please.
Passionately in favor of a graduated income tax. My personal philosophy, which I've tried to follow in my political life, is that taxation should be entirely based on 3 words: ability to pay. I'm very much opposed to user fees that we see in our public schools, coming from a family of 10, where we had all of our band uniforms and instruments and lessons provided by public schools free of charge, where one has to pay incrementally for each of those, I find offensive. In terms of programs such as our higher education status, where we're 47th in the country, in terms of our MBTA, where we're trying to figure out how much of the deficit should actually be hoisted on the users, whether or not they have the ability to pay for those extra fees, is something that I'm opposed to, and I will work very, very hard and passionately for a graduated income tax system. Short of that, there is the Community Reinvestment Act referenced by Joe, and I think that we all agree that that's a good first step. What that does is say to the public and the taxpayer that if you are earning a certain amount, above a certain amount, that you will have an incremental tax surcharge placed on that tax, and that amount varies, but it's approximately $95,000 a year of net taxable income. That's a good first step, in my view, so that the middle-class taxpayer is protected from any tax increase under this system, and those earning higher incomes in terms of a couple would be paying a small amount more. So that's the first step toward what I'm talking about in progressive taxation. I would be in favor of it and would work to that end as your next state senator.
Thank you, Joe. Alex Buck, please.
This is a very extremely important issue for the state, for the Commonwealth. We need to be investing more in our communities, period. I'll even repeat it. We need to be investing more in our communities. And we certainly can't be doing that on the backs of seniors, who many are on the verge of losing their homes or already have. We can't be doing it on the backs of folks that are living paycheck to paycheck. So we're going to have to ask folks that, the wealthiest and luckiest amongst us, to pay a little bit more. And that means having a graduated income tax. I fully support it. I think it's critical to invest in our community. And let's face it, we need to be open and honest about this, because this is what is good for everyone. A sound economic environment requires that we've got communities that are strong and vibrant. And if we're not investing in our communities, our schools, our universities, our public transportation, across the board, pre-K, we're not going to be able to be a leading innovative state in the future. Innovation has always been wonderful for Massachusetts. Right back to the first jobs question, because we've made those investments in the past. And for some reason, we've been backing away from that as a state recently. And we need state senators to get up there and push back and say, no, we have to go back in the right direction. Invest in our communities, understand what those community needs are, and certainly a critical component to that is the progressive income tax.
Thank you, Alex. Michael Barrett, please.
Well, I want to move the conversation to a slightly different place, if I could. I, too, support the progressive income tax, and I applaud my colleagues here. As best we can figure out, though, the folks in Chelmsford aren't going to be looking at a progressive income tax anytime soon. Peter Enrich, who served as legal counsel the last time the progressive income tax was on the ballot, that was 1994, the year I ran for governor, by the way, in the Democratic primary after serving my 8 years in the state Senate. Peter Enrich says that they don't want it back on the ballot because their current polling results indicate that it would lose once again, as it's lost, I believe, 6 additional times so far. So you're not going to see a progressive income tax, and the moral dilemma for your legislators isn't to merely be for something that isn't going to happen. The dilemma is, what do you do in a situation where we have a flat tax and where working class people and middle class people pay the same as the very rich? I think I would not, and I want to speak to the other half of the question, respond to this dilemma by rolling the 5.3% back to 5%. I know it's popular. And I hear you when you send legislators a message that you may not trust the way we watch your money, that we serve as custodians for your money, and of course you'd like your taxes to be lower in a perfect world. The reason I would gently push back myself is that we have to keep Massachusetts solvent. The first question in tonight's debate had to do with the fact that the Massachusetts economy is stronger than that of many, many other states. That's because, in a strange way, we've been fiscally conservative. We've kept revenues at a decent level, even though people would always like to pay fewer taxes. We've kept revenues at a decent level in order to meet expenditures and match well, and we haven't run serious state year-to-year deficits. I believe that we've got to stay on an even keel. I don't think we should increase spending in a spike. I don't think we should decrease tax collections either. I think public services do need supporting, and I would not be in favor of rolling back the income tax to to 5%, much as I would like to meet some folks halfway.
Yeah, thank you. Mara Dolan, please.
Thank you. I do support a progressive income tax. There are people who have to choose between putting food on the table and gas in the car, and people who are buying $20,000 bicycles. People who can afford to buy $20,000 bicycles should be paying their fair share. Everyone should be paying their fair share. And while I agree that the perception and a lack of faith in government, that people think that if the government has more money, they won't know what to do with it, has something to do with the lack of passage for a progressive taxation, that's not the real reason. The real reason it hasn't passed is because too many people are elected with the support of big money donors. And big money donors don't want a progressive income tax. They don't want something that's fair. They want something that benefits them. I've run this campaign without the benefit of big money donors. I've run a grassroots campaign talking to people one-on-one. And I can win with your vote on September 6th. We've had in Massachusetts clean elections, public campaign financing. It isn't enough just to overturn Citizens United. We have to also go back to clean elections. Only one person in all of Massachusetts history was elected under the clean elections law. That was State Senator Jamie Eldridge, who has endorsed me because he knows I'll be the most effective person to work with in the state Senate to get money out of our elections. The flood of corporate money and big money donors are poisoning our political system. It's imperative that we end that. When we do, you'll see a progressive income tax, because that's what the people want. When the people have an equal vote, they'll have an equal tax.
Thank you, Mara. So it sounds like
Let
you're all-
me just offer a comment,
Okay,
and it's
yeah.
not in the nature of a rebuttal, it's in the nature of a
Okay,
supplemental comment. I was talking earlier in the hour about my work reducing the cost of county government when I last served in the legislature. And I was this Mass Municipal Association Legislator of the Year, the spokesperson for cities and towns on Beacon Hill. What motivated me to get active against the costs of counties is that I did want to bring costs down for taxpayers. I wanted to demonstrate that a progressive, a liberal who believes in government's purposes could also spot waste and would wage a battle to reduce that. So I think there's a special responsibility that we progressive legislators have to focus a lot of our work on identifying feather bedding, wasteful jobs, politicians' games, and to reduce the spending there, just as we argue to increase the spending for something like education. In this particular race, Carmen, I've said no to all money from lobbyists. I've said no to all money from PACs, those political action committees, because I want to make sure that I'm not obligated when I go back to the state Senate. I've been there, and I want to make sure that my mind is clear.
Thank you, Michael. Any other rebuttal slash
I mean, I'll just say, to talk to both of these things, I think that one of the other things that have been going around for the last 5 months, talking about, people say, Joe, why do you want to do this? Why do you want to Beacon Hill? It's so broken. Ever you're saying these things will never get passed. Things are impossible. Well, you know what? Having spent several years of my life in places in the world where democracy doesn't exist, where government actually hurts its people as opposed to helps them, it's pretty nice to be back in a place where we do understand underneath it all it can help. And if we actually believe it's impossible, it always will be. At the end of the day, this is our process. If people check out or say it's not going to happen, it never will. It is up to us as citizens, as candidates, as legislators to make sure that we can do the right thing for our communities.
Yes, thank you.
And I'd like to chime in too. I agree. In our pluralistic society, it's difficult to have dramatic progress occur instantaneously. It's a matter of baby steps and small steps, first base, second base, third base. And in terms of what Jamie Eldridge has tried to do with the Community Reinvestment Act, that's certainly a step forward. In terms of health care, Senator Eldridge is also to be commended, and that is he's come forward with a single-payer health insurance piece of legislation, which also is not going to evidently be going very far. But it doesn't mean that we do not support it. It doesn't mean that there are 1 or 2 or 3 legislators willing to go along with Senator Eldridge on this. I view the health insurance progress that we're making with some of the cost containment programs as a very good first step toward first base of getting our arms around it. Beyond that, what we do is we keep on trying for this single payer system. As a small businessman who owned his business for a total of 9 years, running a travel agency, the most difficult thing that I had to do as a cost, which was extraordinary for me to endure, was finding health insurance for people whom I was hiring finding out whether their spouses had the health insurance, finding out whether these employees had a pre-existing health insurance or a health condition that would prevent them from getting health insurance. And why is it that it devolved on us that an employer, a small business starting out on his or her dream, would have to be responsible for finding health insurance? It's extraordinary to think that that's a burden that we would place on people who are starting small businesses. Take that incremental first step. I'm going to be forward. I'm going to be for that. I'm going to convey to the voters that that's my objective, that's my goal, and take one step at a time until we get to the ultimate destination.
Thank you, Joe.
You know,
I just want you, yeah, go ahead.
You don't mind if I jump in here? I think certainly that when we talk about progressive taxes and we talk about raising more revenue at the state to ensure that communities are well funded, we have to understand the local impact. We put a lot of pressure on communities to raise revenues on their own, and that means real estate taxes, which are a very regressive tax. And when we talk about seniors that are struggling, that's why. They're on fixed incomes, and having to meet those local taxes is very, very difficult. And if we want to hold on and keep the fabric of our communities intact, we have to understand that we are starving communities. We're making them make very difficult choices between bad and worse. And we have to ensure that we continue to fund them. Certainly, we need a government that we can have more faith in. Everything from the amendment on the casino bill saying that state legislators couldn't go work for casinos, for 5 years after leaving the legislature, that being cut down to 1. That's an excellent example of the state legislature not using an opportunity to create more trust with the folks in the communities. So we do have to work on the trust in the communities. We do have to invest more in the communities. And it's really a disconnect that continues to grow at the state that we have to correct for.
Great, thank you. Mara, we only have time for about one more comment,
No,
so
the question-
everybody else.
That's very nice of you. The question was about progressive taxation.
Yes.
I gave my answer. I'm sticking to it.
Okay, great. Well, I'm not sure if we'll have time for everybody to respond to this, but if you just give a quick answer.
Are there going to be closing statements, Carmen? Just
No
refresh my
closing
recollection.
statement.
Okay.
But we only have about like a minute and a half left.
Okay.
Yes
But-
or no? We can go yes
Yes or no? Well, how about, I was going to do a death penalty, but that's too serious. How about a yes or no answer on the bottle bill, deposits on water and juice bottles? Alex?
The bottled up in committee bill should have been passed a number of years ago. I continue to support it.
Support the deposits,
Yep.
water and juice. Mike?
I have to mention that the Boston Globe endorsed me for state senate this morning, Carmen,
Yeah.
and I think they did so in part because of my strong environmental record. I would push very hard for an expanded bottle bill.
For yes, 2 yeses. Joe?
I will definitely say yes. I mean, can I spell out my endorsements now too? I feel like everybody's kind of been doing that whenever they can.
Well,
but
could I
will
come back
keep it
to
at
you
that.
for- I'll come back to you for that.
No, I will say yes, absolutely. I think actually what happened in Concord with the bottle ban was partly in response to the intransience of the legislature not to pass the bottle bill.
Great, thanks. So it's 3 yeses so far. And we very quickly, Mara?
As long as I can
No,
get
I
to
know,
my,
we'll go to Joe too.
as long as I can get to my endorsements
didn't-
later, yes, I absolutely support the expanded water bottle bill.
So that's
Bottle
4
bill, yes.
yeses. And
Yes.
Joe?
As the environmentalist park ranger in the group, Man Park, chairman of the board of Sudbury, Aspen Concord River Community Council, with the river coming through Chelmsford, in favor of the Bruce Freeman Trail. I am strongly an environmentalist in favor of the bottle bill.
So all 5 of you in favor
I
of
think
that and
that's-
progressive
I think
income
that's
tax rates, all 5 of you, et cetera. Well, thank all 5 of you for being here today. I think it was a wonderful debate
Yeah.
/ forum, and I very much appreciate
Thank you.
you all participate, along
Thank
with, I'm
you,
sure,
Carmen.
all the people in
Thanks
the
for
district.
having us.
Oh, my pleasure, and we'll get it on YouTube very quickly. The primary election day is Thursday.
Thursday.
September
Thursday.
6th.
Yeah.
And it's also going to
Will
be
you
the...
call me and remind me to
Right, I
vote?
will.
Somehow I
And
think
it's
you'll
al-
know, Mike.
It's also
I
the
think you'll be
Republican
okay,
primary
yeah.
election
Don't
day,
be
too.
sullen, vote for Mullin.
Oh,
And I'd like to thank the production crew and all the press who showed up for the debate.
Yeah, thank you.
Please get out and vote. Our next show, we will have the Republican State Senate candidate on the show. So thank you very much for being here.
you, two
Thank
of
you
them.
all
Thank you,
for
Carmen.
watching.
Thank you, Carmen.
And
Thank
thank
you,
you.
Carmen.
Thank you guys
very
for
much.
coming.
Bye.
All right, well done.
Thank you.
Well
very much.
done.
Thank you.